Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to Molten Modular. This is the Queen of Pentacles. Yes, meager techno skills aside, Queen of Pentacles is this fantastic module from Endorphins, 7 channels of drums and percussion, 3 channels of analog, 4 channels of samples combined in this very performable, very excitable and playful, quirky module. Quirky and strange because it does have some odd bits to it, but all of that sort of folds into the charm of this thing. It's not going to treat you like an idiot. It actually invites you to get familiar, to get close in and personal with it, because if you don't, it's going to leave you slightly puzzled, I think. At least that was my experience. I bought this quite a few years ago now. It's not a new module, it's not a new version, it is the original Queen of Pentacles, and when it first came out I bought it in an instant because I knew it was exactly what I thought I was after at that time. I'd seen the Black Noir that Endorphins had released and thought, no, this is it, because I was trying to sort out the percussive side of my Eurorack, and I almost bought a Black Noir thinking, it's a similar idea, similar thing, but then the Queen of Pentacles came along and it had this combination of this 909 style analog side, which I really like, plus samples, which to me offered up this opportunity to do interesting things that I hadn't really explored before. Now, I won't sugarcoat it for you. I didn't get on with it. I couldn't find a way in. Now, I should explain, or rather, it's become interesting to me playing with it again, in kind of coming to terms with why I didn't like it the first time around. Because I think that's interesting. I think that's important. I think we find this. Sometimes we see a module, we think that's fantastic, and we get hold of it and we play with it and we go, I just don't know. I'm not gelling with it. It's not forming part of my soul. Whereas the rest, everything earns its place in your rack by doing something weird to you, by somehow infecting its way into your very being. And that's why it earns its place. The Queen of Pentacles, I couldn't make that happen. The reason for that is something I've been thinking about all week. I think a lot of it, it will probably come out as I talk about it, as I talk about the module, as we explore it and have a look at how it works. It will, I think, probably become obvious. I think at the time a few years ago, what I was really after was something which was completely instant and intuitive. And the Queen of Pentacles has elements that are, like the great big knob in the middle. You can't get much more instant and intuitive than that. But there are levels to it. There's a deepness to it that I wasn't ready for. And I think there's a certain elegance in design from Endorphins which puts in these multiple facilities and features that you have to learn your way into. Once you have, then they present themselves as a fantastic way to dive into a live performance and change things. But until you have, there are bits that are just completely bewildering. And you find yourself going in loops of, where am I? What am I doing? But hopefully these things will become apparent. So coming back to this now, it's been really, it's just been enlightening in how far I've come, how much more rather, that I understand what it is that I'm trying to do and trying to achieve, and how I can use this to do that. I mean, one of the problems I think I had early on was that I couldn't seem to get it to the right level. It seemed to get lost within everything else I was doing, which is not really what you want for drums. You need that to be forward and center. And I think part of that was because I was new at what I was doing, and I had a heck of a lot going on. Lots of sounds from lots of different places. And all of the percussion in here sort of ended up being a bit of a mush and was overlaid with other stuff. Whereas these days I have a much better signal routing, much better grasp of gain staging and what it is that's going on, and also keeping things a little bit more under control. And so I'm finding, just playing with it as I have done, that it just fits in there perfectly. It's quite extraordinary how well it jumps on in there. The other thing which didn't resonate with me was the samples that came with it. It's like, what? I couldn't seem to work it out. Whereas again, now, having played with it, they seem perfect. So what was I doing? What was I thinking? Perhaps it's the lack of hi-hats. I mean, there's hi-hats in one bank of samples, but they're not in any of the others. And so perhaps I was just, my expectations were wrong. I wasn't seeing it from the point of view of a techno artist, because that's not really what I am. I was seeing it with other eyes, and I wasn't really appreciating it. Anyway, we're back here again. So why am I looking at it now? Well, I was inspired, I think. I was inspired by Julia Bondar's performance at Bristonica last October. Now, Julia is part of the team behind Endorphins. She's has a lot of her design ideas are within the Queen of Pentacles, and she uses this live. And she plays with a single case and can do like 45 minutes of techno on a single case with things changing and evolving and going on, and it absolutely bangs. She's phenomenal. And so I thought, well, if she can do that, I have to give it another go, because it sounded incredible. So here we are. So this last week I've been playing with it quite intently, working things out, trying to understand it, trying to learn the menu system so that I can really get underneath the front panel of this thing. And I've also been working with the ground control, which I've got here, which Endorphins have sent me very kindly to look at. And that's similar in its level of elegance, similar in its level of detail, and also multiple levels of stuff going on. So I think I've now got a better idea of what Endorphins are about, in the way that their modules work, and what they expect of you as a user. They expect quite a lot. That's no bad thing, because we could all do with being pulled into something a little bit more ambitious. But they're expecting you to read the manual, good Lord, and to experiment and to understand things. So it's not just surface stuff. There's levels in here. And I'm up for that. I'm not always up for that. I do lean absolutely towards the intuitive and the one knob and knowing exactly what's going on. So this requires more of me. And I'm up for it, I think. I'm up for it. Now, let's not judge this on my skills as a techno wizard. Let's not do that. Let's just go through it and see what it has to offer. We'll look at the analog side, the sampling side. I'll do a little bit of sampling into it just to show you how convoluted that is. Well, no, I mean, these things are always difficult. Trying to get samples into a device that you're using, it's always a faff. You never see anyone demo how much faff that is, so I will lean heavily into that faff for you, for your viewing pleasure. Try to get some samples onto it. That'll be fun, right? That'll be fun. And then I'll see if I can plug in some different rhythms and bits and pieces just to give you a flavour of what it's about. Because I believe in here is a fantastic little solution, and it's compact enough to fit in a single case and to provide you with an entire rhythm section. Very interesting. So let me just run that little performance again as by way of introduction into what we're doing next. Now, I should point out that I've got the Castor and Pollux coming through a replicant filter and then going into the aux input on the Queen of Pentacles, and so it's being threaded through the same filter as everything else, which of course you don't have to do, but I thought that'd be interesting, so I'm doing that. Woo! So on that note, let's have a look. So Queen of Pentacles here, 7 channels, sort of routed into 5 outputs. You've got your analog section here in this section, sample section here, working great big filter, effects section, and then, you know, heaven out the outputs. That's kind of what you got. So let's look at our analog section then. We've got the kick drum, snare drum, and clap. These are based, I believe, on a bit of a 909 analog circuit. Now, if you've got the clock in, as I have at the moment, it does these rolls relevant to the clock. Take that out, you can just play them as a thing. At the top here, you've got level controls and you've got individual outputs. You've got an output for the kick, snare and clap, and then a couple of outputs for the samples, sort of squished together. After the level control, you've got a switch, which is a mute, and also a switch to send it to the effects section, which we'll look at in a bit. So in performance, once you've got something running, you can absolutely mute it out. Like so. Then you've got these 3 controls here. This one is the decay on the kick drum, this is decay on clap and snare, and this one is like a bit crusher. It's supposed to go over all 3. Doesn't seem to do much to the kick drum, I have to say. That's it, except for 4 tiny little weenie buttons down here, little knobs rather. These are little trimmers. And you've got drive and tuning for the kick drum, tuning for the snare, and sort of tone for the clap. Now these are ridiculously small, and I don't think you could feasibly get your hands on them during a live performance. First of all, you can't really see them, but secondly, they are too small. They are simply too small. Let's get that going through. So you drive here on the kick. Tuning. And then tuning on the snare. I mean, it would be nice if you could reach that successfully. Maybe you can. Maybe you can. And you got tone on the clap. I mean, you can get in there with a screwdriver, you know, like this. because it does have a slot in the top. But I would suggest that that's not particularly awesome. So those are a little bit of an oddity. They are useful things to be able to tune and adjust and sculpt your analog sound, but they are just not feasibly accessible. Changing this one, for instance, here tends to mean that I knock the filter, which is no good at all, because the filter is very on it. As soon as you move it a little bit, there you notice the difference and you start to gain things and lose things, which is not necessarily what you want. But that is our little analog drum machine, and that part alone is lovely. It has a really great sound. They work really well together. You've got individual outputs, level control. You can mute them in and out. You can sculpt them and decay them a little bit. And you've also got CV control over that, and accents and manual control. It's a great little drum kit. The only thing it's missing is hi-hats. But of course, for that, we then have to move to the sampled side. Now, the sample side has 4 samples held in a bank. It comes with 2 banks of 8 within the unit itself. The first bank does indeed have hi-hats. So let's look at that and see how that enables us to use it. So on channels 4 and 5, I've got a closed and an open hi-hat sitting here. Now, the first 2 samples, they work like a hi-hat. They have choking, so they choke each other. If you turn one on, the other one drops out. The other 2 just work together, but there's no choking involved in that. It all plays back at 12-bit. It's a bit crunchy, but you do have a little bit of control over what they sound like. Now, this is all revolving around this fabulous button here, and this sort of pyramid triangle of illumination that's trying to send you some sort of message to tell you what's going on. This is part of the endorphin system that you're just going to have to learn. That's all there is to it. They use coloured LEDs to indicate different things on different places, and they also engage in some kind of sort of button kung fu, where you have to interact and engage with the button just for the right amount of time for it to do a different thing. So if you tap it, it does one thing. If you hold it, it does something else. If you hold it longer, it then does something else. So those are some of the more quirky elements that you're just going to have to grapple with and grasp in order to have a successful Endorphins time. Right? So if I press the button once, I swap between a red and a blue light, and this is changing the functionality, these 4 buttons here, which correspond to the 4 samples. Just looking at these first 2 for now. Now, I don't remember which is which, so we'll work it out. So this is blue. If I turn this knob, okay, that's changing the decay on the hi-hat. Yeah? Do that also on the open. What I find is that you need to sort of turn the knob the whole way for it to catch up with itself, and then you can adjust it. But once you've got your setting, you can then save it with the sample bank so that comes back the same every time. If I press the button once, it turns red. I can now change the pitch. I believe that 12 o'clock is supposed to be the actual speed of the sample. That is kind of all you've got over the samples. So, I mean, I think the idea is that you grab these hits or these symbols or these ticks and beeps and dops and effects or whatever it is you want to land in there, and you use it as it is. To get real-time control over things is perhaps a little bit of a faff, but you tune it in. In fact, what I've come to understand with the Queen of Pentacles over time is that it's really designed for you to craft the sound that you want, and then you go and perform the hell out of it. So rather than fiddling around in the minutiae of what it is you're trying to do and making fine adjustments to the sound, craft your sound and then use it as that is. That, I think, is where the strength lies. And then there's lots that you can do around that as your sound is coming out. So what other samples do we have in here? Well, let's have a quick look. Then once your sound is crafted, it all gets piled in to the state variable multi-mode filter in the middle. High pass one way, low pass the other. You know exactly what it does. It has a resonance knob here too, so you can get everything going. And there's an auxiliary input, so you can route something through, as I've routed through the output of the Castron products, as I say, through this filter here. And then it goes through this as well. So this could potentially control your whole set, could be going through this. But it is a single auxiliary input, let's not go too nuts. But that works really well. Obviously if you don't have that into there, and you have that going somewhere else, you know, pros and cons. Pros and cons, do you want your bass line out by itself, or do you want it in with the drums? And then at the end of the chain, you've got this volume and boost knob. This lays on some lovely saturation and overdrive as you push it past sort of 1 o'clock. Okay, super duper. At the end here we have an effects processor, very much like the Milky Way. I've got the Milky Way over here. This has the same sort of algorithms inside, a whole range of reverbs, flangers, echoes, distortions, that kind of thing. 2 banks of 8 within here, and it works in a very similar way. You've got these wonderfully named things like cabin pressure and cabin fever. Cabin pressure generally being the wet-dry mix, and then the fever being some other parameter. There's a couple of hidden parameters as well under the tap button. You've got a tap tempo going on, although as I've got a clock in, it's going to be synced to that. Again, we have the quizzical, mythical and legendary button, which does stuff and changes from one to the other. Let me see if I can remember exactly how to do this. I tend to use it mostly on the snare. I really like there being a reverb on the snare. I think that works brilliantly well, but there's fun stuff in here that you can play with if you wish. In order to get stuff to go to it, you push the switch to the right. So there it is. So it's currently messing around in a nice big reverb. So if I press the button, it should give me 2 flashes. We're now into a shimmer reverb. Another flash, 3 flashes, stereo room reverb, then a plate reverb, then a spring, ping pong delay, tap to change the tempo. Tape echo. And then a chorus. If I press these two together, it should get me to the other bank. Where I get a gated reverb. Spring reverb again. Reversed reverb. Flanger. Which is rather nice. Ring modulator. Overdrive. Compressor. Pretty good. It's pretty good for beefing up the samples, because very often your samples are not going to be at the maximum level, because making samples at a maximum level is hard. So they can be a little bit quiet. So using the peak compressor is a very useful way of bringing those up a little bit. Then there's this weird freeze looper thing, which I think you hold the tap button and it does stuff. But hey, and that's kind of it. That is your Queen of Pentacles percussion, voice, analog, samples, effects, massive filter, ready to go. Mute stuff out, drop it in, filter stuff, change how long it's going on for, crush it, roll it, drop in crazy samples. One thing I would say about this filter actually is that it could really do with an indent about there, because I mean it's enormously fun to play with. You want to get your fingers in there all the time, but if you don't get it back to the center, it will always sound filtered. So you'll kind of, if it's a little bit off, you lose the kick drum that way. A little bit off, it really does start to peak at that resonance on the hi-hats. So when you're doing a thing, you're going all the way down, you want to bring it back in, you've got to be quite practiced at getting that to hit the noon position, hit the midnight bit. And if that just had a little click or an indent, that would be enormously helpful. You've got velocity on the samples that you can inject to do a little bit of level control. You've got a CV in on the volume control to make the whole thing into a VCA. You've got CV ins on the decay and the bit crushing, and then accents on the individual drums. So you've got a lot of potential for modulation and change within there, as well as taking everything out individually and processing it through whatever the heck you like. You can use the effects, not use the effects, have an auxiliary in that runs through them and the filter. You've got a lot of creative power within the shape of this module. Even if some of the things are fiddly, even if you can't always get to all of the bits that you want, and you have, a sort of a cryptic menu system to try to remember, all of that works together really in your favor in a practiced performance space. Right, good. That's the Queen of Pentacles. I've been having an enormous amount of fun with it. I mean, those rolls are fantastic. Getting into the filter, dropping those in and out. It's just brilliant. It's made me write drum patterns again, which I haven't done for a long time. I tend to just let things flow. I send something through Particles, or I pull something out of the Pounds Pro workout and throw it into a thing and let that kind of do its own thing. But this is so deliberate, so right in there. I'm going to make everybody dance the house go crazy, blow the roof off everything, do my drops and my rises, and we feel, I don't know, that crazy language those kids use in all that kind of techno-y dancey stuff that they do. And that's not to say that it has to be all about that. You can use it for anything. But before we do any of that, let's do the sample thing, because the sample thing is a faff, and I think it's always important to show the faffy stuff around modules, because you never see it. People go, oh yeah, you can stick samples in it, and then bing, there are samples in it, and it sounds awesome. So, but how do you actually do that? Because I found that quite difficult, quite frustrating, and it took a bit of time to get the hang of it. So I want to show that to you. I want to show you me bumbling my way through it, so that perhaps you'll find it easier if you ever have a go. So to do this, what do we need? Well, we need to get to the SD card. That's what we need. Where's the SD card? It's underneath. That's a shame. That's a shame. I mean, if you go looking for reviews on the internet of the Queen of Pentacles, the one thing that they will always point out is the fact that the bloody SD card is not on the front panel. You've got to take the module out to get to it. I mean, it's only here. It's only hang on. It's only there. It's not far away. It's just there. In fact, there's a little rabbit on the front that tells you where it is, oddly. But it is a little bit annoying. But again, it kind of feeds and folds back into the idea that Endorphins are saying that this module is a sort of module where you craft your percussive sound for your set, and then it's done and it's there and you use it. You're not going to be changing samples on the fly, wanting to put something new in from somewhere else. No, you would have prepared all your samples beforehand. And, you know, that makes sense. So the criticism of the SD card is really because people who are reviewing it are spending a lot of time shuffling these samples about. Whereas if you were actually using it, you would get past that quite quickly, and you'd load up your samples and have your banks, and you'd be happily accessing them on the front. So it's kind of like the most annoying thing in the world, but also it's more or less irrelevant. But hey, I'm going to point it out because it is, while you're doing this, annoying. Right, so how are we going to do this? Right, so let me show you. Now, we're not going to do any of that sneaky taking samples from a pre-made pack. No, we're going to make them. We're going to make them right here, right now. And I've got an SD card adapter. I've got an adapter for the SD card to USB. And then I've got a USB, regular to USB-C adapter so that I can plug it all in to the side of my Surface, which is what I'm going to use, I think. All right, this might be stupid, right? But we're going to give it a go. So I've got my Surface here. Stick that on there. Got the Pentacles manual up so I remember what it's all doing. Manual's not too bad, I have to say. I mean, it's a nice big picture, shows you what all the buttons do. What it doesn't really say is how you use anything. It tells you what everything is, but as many manuals do, it doesn't really say, so you can use this to do this. It just defines everything, and that can be hard work. Like trying to work out the whole sample thing was pretty tricky. I mean, it is in here, but they don't tell you a whole lot about it. And I went through a lot of struggle in trying to get the right format of sample. We may see that in a minute when I try to do this. But for instance, I tried to take some samples from Studio One. I just dragged, audio out that I had created, but it would never work. It would not happen. But if I then opened those samples in SoundForge and resaved them, didn't do anything to them, just resaved them, they would then work. But of course, it took me hours to work that out. Why does that happen? I have no idea. They also have to be 16-bit, I believe. At least that's what worked for me. 24-bit samples didn't ever seem to work, although thinking about it now, that might still be that sound Studio One. It might still be the Studio One problem that I wasn't still working out. I don't know. Anyway, stick to 16-bit. Sample rate doesn't seem to matter so much. You can see that I got a bit confused with this. It would be good to have a proper tutorial from someone who knows what they're talking about. But hey, I'm going to bumble our way through this, right? So let's open something simple like Audacity. Just going to use the onboard mic on the Surface. Nothing flash. Nothing flash. and we'll record something, and I'll cut those down, I'll stick them on the right folder, and Bob's your uncle, right? So we need 4 things. 4 things. What are we going to do? Okay, so 1, 2. Well, that's a good start. 1, 2. But let's not use that A. So let's go, woo! Oh, yeah! Is that too hard? Yeah, probably too hard. Let's try that again. Let's go for... I feel like an idiot now. This is a disaster. Let's try it again. Woo! Oh, yeah! Boing! Right. Let's see if I can get into here and do a thing. How do I select anything? Let's use the select button. I'm going to go File, Export Audio. Don't show this again. Export to computer. You getting all this? I'm going to call it. I'm going to have to put the keyboard on because this is getting too tense, I think. So we're going to call it 1.wav. Stick it on the desktop, because that's how you name them. You name them 1, 2, 3, 4, and you put them in a folder. That's going to be 16-bit. I just want current selection. Stereo or mono, doesn't really matter. Shouldn't matter. Let's try it in stereo. Export. Right, so that's our first one. Let's try our second one here. And export audio. Call it number 2. Export audio number 3. It's number 4. Okay, good. Now we need the card. I've taken to turning this off when I take this out. I don't know whether that's necessary or not. But anyway, there's our little card. I'll stick it in there. This should hopefully go in the side and be seen. There's a problem. Do you want to scan it? No, I don't really want to scan it. I just want to get on with it. Sounds like a bad idea. So, let's get rid of that. USB drive. Ooh, here we go. USB drive. So it's essentially within the drive that comes with the Queen of Pentacles. You just get 8 folders, each with 4 WAV files in. So I've already messed with 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to stick this in. I've saved the factory samples somewhere else. I'm going to stick this in. Where am I going to put it? Doesn't matter. I'll stick it in 2. So there are the current ones. I'm going to take my new ones, copy them across, replace, done. Take this out of here. Get my card. Insert that carefully back in here. Like so. Drop that back in, turn it all on. Now, in order for the Pentacles to recognize it, you need to hold the sample select button up here for about 5 seconds, or until it flashes strange colors. There we go. That should hopefully have rescanned and repopulated the table of contents, or that kind of stuff. Where do we put it? We put it in number 2. Well, let's see if we can find. See if we can find it. Something's going on. So it should be in the next bank of samples. Something's there. So if I turn everything else down. That's hilarious. Can't hear that one. Let's take out the clock for a second. Fantastic. So there you have it. Samples imported into Queen of Pentacles directly from me into that, playing gloriously. Absolutely gloriously. Let me change this slightly, because I'm sure we're fed up with this particular groove. So I'm going to take my kick drum, I'm going to plug it into the Detroit Pink 87 over here. Take the snare, do the same. Number 3 as the clap. Now the idea of this little thing, I mean I played with it for 2 minutes, but heck, I thought it was brilliant, so let's do it. Is that it has a thing for making things happen.
It's an extraordinary kind of sign being an artist in any way, any nature. It's an extraordinary kind of sign to express yourself in social dysfunctionalism anyway. It's an extraordinary thing to do. It's an express yourself. It's an extraordinary in such rarity to express yourself. I think it's a lose. It's an extraordinary thing to do. To express yourself in such rarity. It's an extraordinary thing to do. It's an extraordinary to express yourself. It's an extraordinary such in any way. It's a kind of a sign of a certain kind of dysfunction. It's an extraordinary dysfunctionalism anyway. It's an extraordinary thing to express yourself in such rare terms. I think it's a
So there you have it. The Queen of Pentacles, fun at any party, brown to bring the laughs, to bring the dancing, to bring the heart, to bring the people bouncing up and down in pure delight, pure exhilaration. That's what that is. So yeah, I mean, what is it then? What is it about? And how do I feel about it after spending all this time? I mean, I admit I'm finding the workflow from Endorphins to be quite challenging, but I'm getting there and I'm enjoying the journey. I'm enjoying opening things up and I'm enjoying getting the hang of it, because you do need to get the hang of it. You can't really fake it. I don't think. You have to spend a little bit of time working out how to load things, what the knobs do, what everything does, which of course you should on any module. But it's not an intuitive playground. It's a place where you go, right, okay, this is how this works. And then that. And then you play with it for a couple of hours and practice those sorts of things. And you work out that, oh yeah, I can do that. I can do this. I can work that in. So it becomes very intentional. I don't know how well it would work in just a completely improvised set. I kind of feel that if you're writing performance pieces, if you're writing music, then it delivers, because you can absolutely bend it to your will and craft it in exactly the way that you want it to be. And then it's fun. Then it's enormous fun. You set it going, you've got some patterns that you can run into it, you've got some changes you can make, and then you can get to work on the knobs and the filter and the other performance controls, because it really cries out for that. It gives you this opportunity to do the stuff that people really enjoy. You know, it's not so experimental that people are sitting back going, oh, well, yeah, no, that's quite interesting. No, you grab them by the short and curlies and thrash them about the place. Drop stuff in, drop stuff out. Filter, add effects, rolls, it's all there on your fingertips, and that's thoroughly exciting. So if you are cool enough to pull off kind of a proper techno set, then absolutely this is gonna do the business for you, I think. If you spend time exploring interesting samples and have a better idea as to what you're doing than I do, then this is going to reward that. As it say, it has its quirks. It has its levels that you have to understand. It's got these ridiculously small knobs over here, which are frustrating, I have to say. It has a slightly quizzical menu system which can trip you up, and also if you've missed the thing you're after, you then have to cycle all the way around to get back to it. Balancing the levels between the different tracks can be something that requires your attention. Again, it's not just going to do it all for you. You've got to start thinking about how you're working that out and how much of that sonic palette you're going to use. Are you going to have all 7 channels running all the time, always, because that's what you're used to doing, or are you going to find space in there? I found running it with a single bass line to be absolutely brilliant. Totally what you need to do. You know, bring it down to its bare minimum and the Queen of Pentacles really, really shines. You've got to give it its space to do its thing, to be the instrument, to be the key part of what you're doing at that time. Yeah, and then it will blow your socks off. Yeah, I think that'll do. I think that's plenty about that one. So that's the Queen of Pentacles. That's a lot of fun. It's on a pretty good deal, I think, at the moment. So worth checking out if you've not thought of it before, or if you've looked at it and gone, yeah, I just don't really know whether that's my cup of tea. I think perhaps it's worth giving it another go. Certainly I have, and I've enjoyed doing so. I hope that was helpful. In the meantime, go and make some tunes.